The pharaohs you know were not the only pharaohs. There was another dynasty, born south of Egypt, in the land the Egyptians called Nubia, that marched north, conquered the Nile Valley, and ruled Egypt for nearly a century. Their king was Piye. He did not arrive as a foreign raider from across the sea. He came down the Nile from Kush, a powerful African kingdom centered at Napata, in what is now northern Sudan. His army brought horsemen, archers, and a political claim more dangerous than any weapon. Piye said Egypt had fallen into disorder and that he had come to restore it. In 728 BC, Egypt was divided between rival rulers. Local princes controlled different cities, alliances changed by the season. The north had a coalition. The south had Piye. He defeated them city by city, took Memphis, received the submission of the Delta rulers, and became pharaoh of a unified Nile Valley. This was the beginning of Egypt's 25th Dynasty, often called the Black Pharaohs. But the most startling part of Piye's story is not only that he conquered Egypt, it is what he did after winning. He did not erase Egyptian religion. He presented himself as the rightful protector of Amun, the ancient god whose great sanctuary stood at Thebes. He conquered Egypt by claiming to save it. And then, when the pharaohs of Egypt had abandoned pyramid burials for centuries, Piye brought the pyramid back, not to Giza, but to Nubia. To Egypt, Nubia was the land south of the first cataract of the Nile, a region of gold, cattle, ivory, soldiers, and ancient cities. But Nubia was not simply a resource zone waiting for Egyptian history to begin. For centuries, powerful societies had grown along the Nile. The kingdom of Kush inherited that world and made Napata its sacred center. At Napata stood Jebel Barkal, a dramatic mountain rising from the desert. Kushite kings connected the mountain to Amun and to the divine geography of Egyptian kingship. Kush adopted Egyptian writing, religious imagery, and royal titles. But adoption is not the same as surrender. Kushite rulers used Egyptian traditions to strengthen a kingdom with its own political base, army, wealth, and identity. They were not trying to become Egyptian because they had no culture of their own. They were using the most powerful language of legitimacy in the Nile Valley and speaking it with a Nubian accent. By the 8th century BC, Egypt was weak. The authority of the pharaoh had fractured. Local rulers competed for control, while the Kushite court watched from the south. Piye inherited the opportunity and the responsibility. He was not launching a random invasion. He was answering a political crisis that reached into Kush's religious and economic world. The north thought it was fighting one more rival king. It was actually opening the gates to the dynasty that would rule both banks of the Nile. The campaign began when Tefnakht, a powerful ruler of Sais in the western delta, built a coalition against Kushite influence. Several Egyptian princes joined him. Piye moved north. His army traveled with the Nile, using the river as road, supply line, and political theater. At every city, rulers had to decide whether to resist, negotiate, or switch sides before the army arrived. The campaign was not only a series of battles, it was a collapse of confidence. Piye's victory stela preserves his version of the campaign. It is not a neutral newspaper report. It is royal propaganda, carved in stone to explain why his conquest was legitimate. But propaganda can still reveal strategy. Piye presents himself as chosen by Amun, disciplined by ritual, and different from the rulers he defeats. He criticizes enemies for failing to honor the gods properly. He makes religious order the reason for military expansion. The Kushite army moved through Upper Egypt. Cities that had resisted were surrounded. Cities that surrendered were spared or reorganized. Piye's forces used archers, horsemen, and river movement to keep pressure on the coalition. The decisive objective was Memphis, the ancient city that controlled the connection between Upper and Lower Egypt. If Piye took Memphis, the north could no longer pretend that his power stopped at Thebes. The defenders tried to hold the walls. Piye's troops attacked from the water and from the land. The city fell. Tefnakt's coalition began to unravel. One ruler after another submitted. bringing gifts, oaths, and the outward signs of loyalty. Piye had turned a military campaign into a procession of surrender. But the most revealing moment came after the victory, when Piye refused to meet some of his defeated rivals face to face. Not because he feared them, because he believed they were ritually unclean. The victory stela describes Piye's strict religious behavior. He would not accept the same contact as an ordinary conqueror. The message was deliberate. He was not merely another warlord taking advantage of a weak Egypt. He was the legitimate king restoring sacred order. This is how Piye conquered Egypt twice. First, with soldiers. Then, with a story about why the soldiers had been necessary. When the northern ruler submitted, Piye did not remain in Egypt as a permanent resident surrounded by hostile cities. He returned south to Napata. Leaving did not mean the conquest failed. It meant Piye governed through a network of loyal rulers while keeping the spiritual center of his kingdom in Kush. The pharaoh had conquered Egypt and gone home to Africa. Piye's successors consolidated Kushite power. Shabaka, Shabitku, Taharka, and their successors ruled Egypt as the 25th Dynasty. They repaired temples, commissioned statues, revived ancient religious forms, copied older texts, and presented themselves as restorers of a sacred Egyptian past. The kingdom once treated by Egypt as a southern frontier now controlled the throne. Under Taharka, the dynasty reached its greatest power. The Nile Valley was again unified on a scale not seen for centuries. Kushite monuments appeared from Nubia to Egypt. At Karnak, Thebes, Memphis, Kawa, and Jebel Barkal, the rulers of Kush made stone announce a political fact. The center of the Nile world had moved south. But the dynasty faced a new enemy from far beyond the Nile, Assyria. The Assyrian Empire had already conquered territories in the Levant and was pushing toward Egypt. Taharka supported resistance against Assyrian expansion. The conflict became a war between two imperial systems. Kush had the Nile, cavalry, archers, and deep African territory. Assyria had a battle-hardened army and a relentless imperial machine. The Black Pharaohs could rule Egypt, but could they survive an empire that had already destroyed kingdoms older than their own? Assyrian invasions forced the Kushites out of parts of Egypt. Taharka's successors briefly tried to recover northern territory, but the 25th Dynasty eventually lost control. The Kushite army retreated south. Egypt had been taken back by its enemies, but the dynasty had changed the meaning of Egyptian kingship forever. It had shown that the pharaoh's throne could belong to rulers from Nubia. Piye was buried at El-Kurru, near Napata. His tomb was a pyramid, not one of the giant monuments of Giza, but a steep Nubian pyramid rising over a royal burial chamber. This was a deliberate revival. Egypt's Great Pyramid Age had ended centuries earlier. Its later pharaohs favored hidden rock-cut tombs. Piye chose another message. The old form was not dead. It belonged to Kush too. Piye did not personally build every pyramid in Sudan. The Great Pyramid Fields of Meroë came centuries later, when Kush's political center had moved south. But his burial revived the tradition that would produce one of the largest concentrations of pyramids on Earth. More than 200 Kushite pyramids stand across the wider Sudanese tradition, especially at Meroë. They are smaller and steeper than Giza's pyramids, with distinctive chapels and underground burial chambers. So the accurate version is even more powerful than the viral version. Piye did not build them all. He restarted the royal tradition that made them possible. At Meroë, later kings and queens transformed the pyramid into a uniquely Kushite monument. The architecture preserved Egyptian symbolism, but changed its proportions, materials, and surroundings. The result was not a copy of Egypt. It was a new African royal language built from inherited forms. The pyramids became a stone archive of a kingdom that survived the loss of Egypt and continued for centuries in Nubia. Why do so many people know Egypt's pharaohs, but not the rulers who conquered Egypt? Part of the answer is that the winners write the next monument. After the Assyrian conquest, the names and images of the 25th Dynasty were damaged or removed from Egyptian monuments. Their statues were broken. Their reign was reduced in the official memory of the land they had ruled. But erasure is never perfect. The victory stela survived. The temples survived. The pyramids survived. The Nile carried the story south, from Egypt to Napata, and from Napata to Meroë. The archaeology refuses the idea that Kush was a footnote to Egypt. Kush was a major Nile civilization with its own political history, economic power, religious institutions, military traditions, and artistic identity. The phrase Black Pharaohs can be useful when it corrects the whitening of ancient history, but the real story is bigger than a label. Piye was not important because he can be placed into a modern racial argument. He was important because he was a Nubian king who conquered Egypt, ruled as pharaoh, and reshaped the political history of the Nile Valley. His greatest monument was not one pyramid. It was the reversal. For centuries, Egypt looked south for gold, labor, and territory. Under Piye, Egypt looked south and saw its king. Today, Piye's pyramid stands in Sudan. The Meroë pyramids rise farther south. Their steep silhouettes cut into the desert sky, often photographed as if they were mysterious leftovers from someone else's civilization. They are not mysterious. They are evidence. These are the seats of power the world forgot. Not only thrones of gold, but kingdoms that crossed borders, restored traditions, and made the ancient world answer to an African ruler. The pharaohs you know were not the only pharaohs. Some came from Kush. Next week, we meet the warrior queen who faced Rome, captured its standards, and made an emperor negotiate for peace. Subscribe to Terracotta Throne. The past is bigger than the version you were taught.